Karin and...
Hi, I'm Jane Ann MacLachlan. I have 2 science fiction novels out. One is Walls of Wind, and it is a story of aliens based on the supposition, what if men and women were completely different species? So I have a world in which males are a different species from females, but they are symbiotically reproductive, so they have to get along. And this is my young adult fiction, and it is science fiction, and it is based on what if you found out someone you loved had done something wrong in the past? Would you keep their secret or would you tell? And young Kia has to go on an adventure to resolve that question. Those are my novels in a nutshell. This is published by Edge. This one I brought out myself. Both of them are doing equally well. And now, on NaNoWriMo, as we were talking about, I am writing the sequel of this for my publisher. Oh. And yes, I'm at 35,000. This month alone. I never thought I could do that. I never thought. Yeah, it's killing me, but I'm doing it. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, Michael Martineck. I write science fiction. My last book came out from Edge, also The Milkman. Won an Iffy Award this year, so I was kind of happy about it. It's nice for other people like your work. And I write for a living. I make most of my money writing ads and speeches and press releases, which is why I thought I could add something to the panel, because I do have to. I write and then go and write. But there's that balance that I have to try to keep. I don't know if I'm good at it, but I have techniques.
My name is Brandon Draga. I write epic fantasy and children's books. This is my first novel, The Summer Lark Elf. The sequel, Missing Thames War, is also out from Realm Walker Publishing Group, as is my first children's book, Dragon in the Doghouse, also from Realm Walker. I'm also currently working on a short story set in the same world, as well as several short stories, and a novel to be released with the Ed Greenwood Group. That I can't say much more about, because otherwise I think Ed actually put binding spells in the NDA that will effectively eviscerate us if we say any more.
Howdy, my name's Liz, Liz Hirst, and as a writer, my novel series is Distant Early Warning, and currently I'm doing NaNoWriMo to write the sequel to Distant Early Warning, The Ground That Grows Roses. And Distant Early Warning is a series about a young woman who goes into Northern Ontario to find out the secret of her father's death, because he's kind of become a screaming monster that turns people mad. And there's a dog named Jeff, and he's the best character.
Dogs are always the best characters.
They are, yeah. Oh, Jeff is the best.
So, I'm Reiss. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Also, publisher, Robotica, 5 Demons You Meet in Hell, coming out in May of next year. So, from Timothy Carter. I do a bunch of cool stuff with my publishing company, Popsicle Publishing, and go.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm Reiss. I have a novella from the Tor.com novella imprint line. And that's my first longer piece of fiction, but I have about 24 short stories that have been published in various markets, pro, semi-pro, various. And okay, so we're here to talk about getting things finished and sort of the end of the writing process. And I think for the purposes of this discussion, we'll try and limit it to getting the writing done, because after you finish writing, there's a whole bunch of other things that happen. Trying to sell it, or if you're self-publishing, you have to put the cover together and you have to do promotion. And if
I do my own layout.
Yeah.
So I have many stages of frustration after the finish already.
And once all that's done, then there's still there's blog tours and there's interviews, and but we'll try and limit it to just getting the writing done, and we'll call that finished, even though there is not actually such a thing as finished. Before we start about finishing the process, I think maybe it might be worth just going through and giving a sort of brief idea of how you write, because if you outline, let's say, then that might have an impact on how you finish it. But and if you don't, then you might, or writing out of order, in order, all these sort of things will certainly, depending on how you do it, done will look a little different. So why don't you?
The first novel I ever did, which is my journeyman piece, I got every chapter down. I wrote out what was going to happen in every chapter. It was wonderful to write that book, but it was also hard because a lot of what I was doing then was getting to what had to happen next. And the getting to bits are really tough. I have never been able to plot like that again. I don't know why. Because I would like to be able to plot better. But it seems to kill the writing. So now I'm starting with plotting because knowing where you're going, I believe, is very important to being able to finish. And so now my plotting is a little more open than it was that first time. The way that I plot now is to hit the highlights. What has to happen about this point? Where are the main plot points? What is the midpoint crisis going to be? I teach a whole course on this, so putting it into a nutshell is tough. But I get an idea of where I'm going, who the characters are, and where I'm going to end up roughly. And then I let myself be surprised as I write. I have a number of tricks for writing faster, which we'll probably talk about later.
Well, that's interesting. I almost hate to talk about process. I find it interesting when other people do, but I don't like to talk about myself because everybody's different. Every work is different. Every book is different. So I've written, I don't know, published 4 books. So I've probably written, 18, and they were all different. I do tend to know how I want to start and know how I want to finish, and the books tend to be much more interesting if I don't think too much about. If I keep it in the middle organic and let everything flow.
I absolutely kind of follow that same process. Of the 3 novels I've written so far, I have done next to no outlining, which is, I'm sure many would say, a terrible idea.
Works, it works.
Yeah. But for this 4th novel, which is the 4th in the series and the final in the series, I have started to write myself an outline just because there's nothing that you can leave kind of loose by the end of it. So I wanted to make sure that everything was in kind of a neat bow. But I do still have very kind of nebulous idea of the outline. Nothing is really set in stone yet.
Once I have my concept document, because I have more ideas than I can ever write down, once I have my concept document, then I start with a loose outline. So sometimes I don't know where something's going to end. Like sometimes I actually don't know the end of my own books, but I know the beginning and sort of the beginning of the middle. But other times I do know the ending, and it depends on where the mystery is in there. Like it depends on my outline, but once I have a loose outline, I tend to let the chapters sort of form themselves as I'm writing. Like I find an organic break and then I make it and then I go. I don't really have like chapter to chapter outlines, really more of a like plot wide outline that I use. And when I'm in those phases that you talked about, like the getting to phases, my 2 rules are don't get bored, because if I'm bored, everyone else is bored. And I do like a little sketch out session where I see where it's going to go before I go there, because otherwise that's where you're going to get lost. Like that's where it gets muddy for me. And yeah, I think don't get bored is probably my primary rule, because I write beginning to end just like a movie. So if it's interesting to me, like I'm watching a movie, I'm feeling good about it. If it's not, I need to change the direction.
Yeah, I am a compulsive outliner. I will outline flash fiction. And it's not just one outline either. I start with a paragraph or 2 about what the story is going to be. Then I will do a number by number outline, and then I'll sit down and write. And the fact is, when I'm writing, I don't necessarily follow the outline 100%, because as I'm writing, I'll be like, well, this person wouldn't necessarily do what the outline says they do, so I'm going to have to change everything that follows. But I like having a very clear outline for writing anything. Just to clarify, everyone here writes in order? In other words, you start at the beginning, write through and then
Yeah.
finish. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly how I do it, but there are people who will write the bits that interest them and then wind up having trouble with the bits that didn't interest them because they're not terribly interesting, but I guess we don't have anyone to talk about that.
Well, to clarify, I mean, I treat writing more like sculpting. I throw down the clay, so I've written from beginning to end, but then I go back and sculpt it and fix it.
Okay,
So
and that's another
it's
question.
a little more.
So about how many drafts would people say that they will go through before they have something that they would consider done and sending to an editor? Because once you send it to an editor, if it gets bought, the editor will say, well, I think you need more female characters, so put in another 3. And then you might have to rewrite it, for that. Or, I don't like the ending, write a new ending. But so ignoring the drafts that are imposed upon you from the outside, how many drafts would you say you go through before you have something that you feel is ready to submit?
Well, I heard a great quote once. It was quoting, I believe it was Michelangelo, and someone asked him how he creates his sculptors. And apparently he said, or another great sculptor. I'm a little fuzzy because it's a long time ago I heard it. But first I get the marble, the block of marble, and then I cut out all the unnecessary pieces. And that sounded really cool, except that for writers, first we make the block of marble, and then we cut out all the unnecessary pieces. So my first draft is making the block of marble. And when it finishes, it looks like a block of marble. It's not, I give myself permission to write the first draft badly. Just get it on paper, get the marble, then you can work with it. So that, I guess, you would call first draft. Then I edit it once myself to make it look something like a sculptor. And then I will send it to my first beta reader, who is mean as nails, and will tell me everything that is really bad with my novel in no uncertain terms. Once she wrote back and said I couldn't get beyond the first 4 pages because I hated the character so much. She is really, like right out there. She's fantastic. She picks up everything. And I loved the character. So I realized, okay, I better rewrite the first 4 pages so that she sees what I love in this character. Okay, so then that's the second draft is when I get her comments and write that. Then I will redo the book according to what she said and send it to another beta reader. I only use each beta reader once because
Use them,
a
just
person.
toss them aside. No.
Yeah, that's it. Once for every book. You can only read a book for the first time once. All my readers are reading my book for the first time, so I need beta readers to read it for the first time. So then I'll give it another editing. Then, and the same thing will come back, and she will edit it. So we're at my edit, Lori's edit, Nana's edit. Then we go to my agent, and she makes comments, and I edit it again. And then I hope I'm done. Well, I'm not, but I hope I'm done.
It's an unusual question for me. I mean, it's almost like the first draft because I keep hovering over it and going back and trimming and pushing and by the time it goes off to my publisher, you could almost consider it the first draft. And then I haven't had that experience where it comes back and I have to make huge amounts of changes. That hasn't happened. My first book, Cinco de Mayo, I had to remove a chapter.
So you edit as you go, which means multiple editing, but it happens as you're writing.
No, I just don't. I don't think it's not like that early 20th century. You had the reams of paper, and there it was, and now I'm going to have another ream of paper and another ream. It always seems like it's the same file that I'm editing, so it doesn't feel like it's different drafts.
I will always start with kind of the first draft that you purposely write badly just because you need to get it finished. I'll do a round of editing myself. I'll send it out to my first batch of beta readers who will, some will be looking for technical errors, whereas others will be looking for plot errors or giving me feedback in that sense. I'll send it to my second batch, and then just go straight to the editor because I'm small press and don't have to worry about an agent.
I have kind of 2 modes. If I'm writing really slow, I can produce an incredibly clean draft. I wrote Distant Early Warning really slowly, and that was a 2-draft book. Like, it really was. I sent it to the editor that I was using, and we had 1 round of edits, and that was it. Because it was just, I thought it really slowly. I'd written it while I was in animation school, so it was kind of as I had time, because sharing animation will kill you. And and so, you know, I kind of did it slowly, and so it was really clean. But then, you know, there's been other books when I go quickly, it's probably more a 3 or 4 draft process. Like, I wrote a history book recently, and between all the research that we were trying to pack in, and the problem was our research kept surfacing like as I was doing drafts, so they would uncover more material, and then I would have to incorporate that, and so on and so forth. So, you know, and somewhere along the line, I invented a brother that she didn't have. That was the funniest one. But yeah. But that doesn't work in true life history. Yeah, but that was more of a 3 or 4 draft thing, because I was trying to get that out for a deadline, and it turned out I didn't have a research assistant, so I ended up spending a lot of the time I expected to be writing and perfecting it on research instead. So, you know, that was definitely one that we edited more.
Yeah, so with me, anything that's under 3,000 or 4,000 words, I'll do a draft and then send it to people, and they'll look at it, and I'll then let it sit for a month or 2, because if I'm writing something like that and I'm still in love with it, I can't see where it's not working, because it's the way it is in my head, and I really like that idea. So I'll let it sit for a month or 2, and then I'll come back and I will see, oh well, there's good parts, but it's not what I imagined it was. And with longer works, I actually will compose it in Google Docs, and my wife will be reading along as I'm writing it. And that's, my first reader, and I can see looks of horror on people's faces, but...
You can write with someone looking over your
shoulder. Oh yeah, and sometimes she will be, literally standing behind me, reading over my shoulder as I'm typing.
Wow.
Okay. This was when my...
Her marriage would not survive.
I was just going to say, is this your first marriage?
If someone does that.
When my son was less than a year old, there was one time he was sort of cranky, so he was sitting on my shoulders, and he was drumming on my head with some spoons as I was writing. So I've gotten used to,
Wow. You really focus well.
But then once that's finished, also I'll let it sit for a month, then send it out to first readers, then they'll get back to me, and then sometimes it'll go through several drafts after that, and always my first draft is shorter than the subsequent drafts, because there are things that I know in my head, how things look, the background stuff, because I tend to have a lot of world building, and I don't describe it unless the characters would think about it. If it's something that they all know, I mean, most people don't think about pants. So, if they're wearing something that's not pants and they just don't think about it, you have to find a way to work that in. But when I'm writing it, it's told from their point of view, and it's all the stuff that they know. Okay, so that's more or less our processes. Let's start talking about...
I want to go to Alter's writing dojo, where you write, well, people pop in your head, you write, you come out of there, you're like some kind of super black belt writer.
Like the hot coals.
That's something for me. I can't have people, if anyone reads my work in any way while it is in draft form, like before it's done and it's ready to go to first readers, I will be blocked for a minimum of 3 weeks. No one can look at it. It has to be a vacuum and me listening to my inner voice.
I mean, this is the thing that they don't necessarily tell you about parenting is that it's really boring. I mean, it can be really, because the kids want to do the same thing over and over again. And you read, this book about the monkey pounding on the drum, and you know how it turns out. But you got to read another 500 times.
Yes.
So your mind wanders, and I had to watch him. I couldn't, not be doing something with him, and that's something that kept him happy. And I was able to sit and write for a few minutes. So I took the time I had.
Able to sit and write for a few minutes, I guess.
All right, but let's move on to trying to get things finished. And in terms of that, how often do you leave things without finishing them? Start something and then not finish it. Is that something that happens to everyone else? Because it certainly happens to me a lot. Jane?
Never.
No. Okay. Okay.
I have that. My sister says I have an urge to completion. I can't not complete a project. If I lose interest, tough. You know, I mean, I'm a writer. This is my job. You can't say in any other job, oh, well, I'm sick of this. I think I'll go home and do something else. So I think, well, as a writer, I will finish it. And part of being able to do that is knowing that it's okay if it's crummy, if it's not interesting to you anymore, if you're desperately trying to figure out what's going to happen next, because you are going to turn this marble into something that is worth reading. So I always finish, and I mean, are we going to later talk about how to keep going?
Oh yeah. I mean,
okay,
that's you know, if but this is, you know, step one is, do you ever stop? Step two is, if you know.
Sometimes I'll put it away for 3 or 4 days.
I have to, because of the different things that I write, I have to be much more mercenary about it. So I've got things all over the place that are half written, third written, not quite finished. I can't say as I enjoy that, you know, but if I have to write a, you know, brochure about something, I have to do that, and things get pushed aside. Or if I think, you know, this book is going to do much better than some other ideas that I have. So I've got things on my little mental shelf all over the place.
I've had some books that I completed, but did not do the editing, or they need a re-editing.
Okay,
so at that stage, but I
yeah,
get
because,
the first draft.
Like you were saying, that in other jobs, I mean, to the extent they have a day job, it's archaeologist. And there was a place we were digging we opened up a trench because we thought something would be there. And we kept digging, and eventually we're like, it's probably not here. Let's close this trench.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, it really is. Like this, so I shouldn't dig this hole anymore.
Now the question is, you know, I think that part of getting things done is knowing when to stop digging if there's nothing in the trench. So, you know, being able to recognize that.
But I don't start a lot of projects that I don't, like, I mean, I will ruminate on a project for a long time before, and I have to be really in love with that idea, and I have to really love those characters, and I have to hear them talking in my head before I write the first word.
Right.
So it's almost like I've checked out to make sure it's there.
You close your
before
trench
I start
you
digging. Yeah, exactly. I won't open it until I know there's something, a hole or something down there I want to find.